All right, hi, welcome to the Fantasy Six Pack Network. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. We're going to be talking some Kansas City Chiefs football, seeing if Pat Mahomes can bounce back a little bit in some fantasy football for us here after a couple of down years statistically for him. To do that, we got Caleb James from Arrowhead Pride. Thanks for coming on, Caleb. How's it going on tonight?
It's doing pretty good, and thanks for having me on here. I'm glad to be on the show. I know you guys probably got some questions, some pressing Chief stuff you want to get to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Always a hot team. You know, they've done very, very well the last few years. So let's just start right off here, though. That lead topic here, Pat Mahomes, like been a fantastic NFL quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but for fantasy purposes, it has been a bit of a down year, a couple of years statistically for him. Some of it has been the weapons around him, offensive line not as great, all that kind of stuff. Travis Kelce getting a little older, getting some pieces back this year. Revamped wide receiver room. We'll get into that a little bit more later too. What do you foresee here with Patrick Mahomes? What have we seen from camp? Is it looking like we're in for a big season from him again?
Yeah, definitely. And fortunately for the Chiefs, these down years for him haven't really been down years for the team.
Mm-hmm.
But these kinds of seasons he's had the last 2 years have not quite been up to what he had. His first 2 years in the league, his first 3 years in the league, and then his most recent MVP season back in 22. But I think what he's kind of learned here these last couple of seasons is kind of how to become a more complete quarterback overall when maybe he hasn't had the same level of talent around him on the offensive side of the ball. That said, the Chiefs have spent, draft picks. They've added quite a few guys who can help kind of turn a lot of this around as far as, the players he has on the field with him. They've gone out and tried to revamp their offensive line again, and right now they're probably rolling with one of the deeper groups of receivers he's had since he's been here. But so far in camp, he's looked sharp, he's looked crisp. There's obviously been a extra sense of urgency, extra sense of motivation. But really, I think some of the big things we've noticed are they're trying to push the ball back down the field. That's been something missing from the Chiefs' offense in general. But I think as far as the efficiency goes and possibility of putting up, some of the video game numbers again, I think we're getting really close to seeing that this year.
Yeah, there's a lot of hope around that. You know, especially given that wide receiver room, as you mentioned, is very deep. Although it doesn't come without its issues, though. And of course, I'm going to jump into that here next, and that is Rashee Rice likely facing a suspension week 5, week 6. Not exactly sure when it's going to get dropped, but he's got that hearing after week 4, I believe. Are the Chiefs doing anything to kind of prepare themselves to have, to be without Rashee Rice for an extended period of time, possibly?
Fortunately for the Chiefs in this situation, they do kind of know how to live in this situation without Rasheed, since he did miss most of last season with that ACL injury. So, they're obviously have repped him in a lot at training camp and in the preseason when they can. But I do think they'd have a plan in place. They've got some guys on the roster right now, like Xavier Worthy, for
Mhm.
example. Obviously, first round draft pick last year, really came on strong and in the playoffs last season. He's a guy that a lot of Chiefs fans are going to be looking forward to. Got the rookie this year, Jalen Royals. They're kind of prepping him to possibly be like the Juju Smith-Schuster takeover, kind of that power slot eventually. That's kind of who he's been mirroring in camp. Obviously, Juju, with what he's got left in the tank. And then you got a couple of guys like Tyquan Thornton, who has made some waves around camp this year. He's ran a lot of reps with the ones. He's probably going to come in and be a downfield threat, kind of like Justin Watson was last season. Jason Brownlee a little bit. And then, of course, all reliable Travis Kelce. You've still got him around. You've got Noah Gray also. So they know how to live without Rashee Rice. There's been a little bit of news today that the Chiefs might be interested in trading for a running back. So I think for the team overall, they might instead of maybe leaning on that in the passing game, they may try to run the ball a little bit more. The offensive line's pretty solid run blocking group they have right now. So there's it was reported they're looking to possibly add a few more
Mhm.
bodies at running back. back too. But I think they'll be fine. I think with Rice, I think it'll be about a month, maybe in some month and some change, that he will be gone when the suspension is served. But I think that it's something that they'll be able to get through, and having Andy Reid calling the plays should help things out also.
Yeah, you mentioned Xavier Worthy and that late season, dominance that he had there, especially in the playoffs. It did come with, at times like he had really good games, but it wasn't a ton of like targets. It was just like big splash plays. Do you see a little more consistency from him? Getting more targets, getting more involved in the offense instead of relying on those big splash plays.
Definitely, I think that that's been one of the emphasis in camp so far. What we've seen is them trying to go to him more, and him trying to get a whole route tree down, not just like jet sweeps and not just deep balls where he's going to use his speed, but kind of a little bit of everything. And I think a good example of game last year where you saw some of this coming together was the championship game against Buffalo. That was probably the most complete game of his season. I think he had around 80 yards. You saw them use him in a bunch of different ways. It wasn't just, big deep balls or like, jet sweep stuff around the line of scrimmage. He was running a full route tree, showed off the ability to make some contested catches, make catches over the middle. So that's what they're trying to build off of with him. I'm personally excited for it. I think the dude has just a ton of potential right now. Obviously, there's a little bit of durability questions. How is he going to hold up, running this full route tree through the course of a season? And can he really be your number one go-to guy? But, so far in camp, I think it's pretty clear that they do, value him as a guy who could be a potential wide receiver one and right now or in the near future.
All right. And then my other receiver that I wanted to bring up here was Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown. Has had injury concerns of his own. Is he looking to be able to, be healthy finally and step up and be, another reliable target for Mahomes?
We really hope so. And I forgot to mention him a minute ago. He's just, his injury stuff has been a definite problem since he's been with the Chiefs. That kind of gave them issues last season. One of the reasons they went ahead and bring in DeAndre Hopkins is because he wasn't quite ready. And when he's been ready, he's been fine. There's definitely good spots for them to use him in. But his health right now is going to be pretty critical to the team moving forward. I think they like him. I think they really want to trust him to let him be a guy that they can go to, if it's a big third down and they need a completion, or, if he's going to be just a steady guy over the middle, making some, nice plays over the middle, helping them stretch the field, to the other side that Worthy's with, kind of give him that kind of a little bit of double trouble action. But it's just going to depend on him being healthy. Haven't seen a whole lot of him this preseason. He's missed a little bit of camp also, but hopefully he's ready to go by opening day.
Yeah. You mentioned Travis Kelce, and it wasn't quite the Travis Kelce seasons we're used to in the past. He's getting up there in age. Is there any signs that he's, maybe regaining a step back this year? Like a little like, this might be my last year type thing. Let's go out big.
They haven't mentioned anything about this, being his last season. I don't think him or really anyone on the team is going to be interested in, having some sort of a deal where it's just like, he wants like to have this standing ovation every game. Because I think when you do get down to it, who he is as the football player, he's always been the guy that comes through in the clutch for the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
He's always been the guy that even when he's banged up, he's going to come through and get those 8 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown when you need him. I think he tried to do that last season. I think he was just beat up, but even at times, you saw like in the playoffs against Houston, he's still got some moments where he's just going to be better than everyone else. He does look a step quicker. I think he just looks better rested. I think one of the things with, people forget about him is he has taken an enormous beating through his career. I mean, even in Mahomes' early days, some of those games he was catching 12 or 14 passes a game. That takes it out of you. And then just through the course of time, being the guy that everyone knows has to get double teamed, it makes it, all of that stuff makes a difference. he looks rested. He does look like he's, a little bit lighter this year. Looks like he's moving around well. Some of that could just be, just having fresh legs in training camp. The key with him this year, I think, is going to be load management to where, when it comes time for the big games, late in the season, he's still going to be ready to go and be the same Travis Kelce.
Yeah, so maybe not as reliable for fantasy overall this season. There's going to be some games where they let him, take a few plays off when they don't need him, and which totally makes sense. Like, they're trying to win Super Bowls. They don't care about our fantasy teams. You mentioned the running game, and they are going out and looking for a running back. I mean, I feel like every season they're trying to sign a new running back. I don't like this time of year. Like, they have a lot of guys, it feels like, but maybe they don't trust them. Isiah Pacheco, though, is back, seems fully healthy. The last time we saw him fully healthy, he was awesome. And I really like the guy. He runs really, really hard. I think that's part of the problem why he keeps getting hurt. But with him back healthy, even though they're trying to go out and find somebody, or trade for somebody, do you think that he is the clear lead back?
I would say right now he is, and you just take a look at who else is on the roster. You've got Kareem Hunt, and we know what Kareem Hunt does at this point. He's going to be a good short yardage back. He's probably going to rack up some touchdowns in the red zone this year for the Chiefs. But outside of that, he doesn't have any of the same juice or pop he used to have, and now he's missed kind of the back half of camp into this these last 2 weeks of the preseason with kind of like an ankle injury. It hasn't really been reported too much of what it is, but he hasn't done a whole lot. You've got Carson Steele, which he's going to probably end up being more of the team's fullback moving forward, I would assume, if he does make the roster. You got the rookie Breshard Smith, who a lot of Chiefs fans in general are excited about. He's got this electric playing style. The only problem is he's pretty raw at running back. He's only really been a running back a few seasons. He's definitely going to need a little bit more development and tuning. And then they did go out and get Elijah Mitchell, but he's been quiet all camp. He hasn't really made too much of an impact. So I don't foresee him being a guy. He's a guy who's probably on the roster bubble right now. He might not even make it. But I think a lot of the stuff with the Chiefs looking to possibly trade for someone comes from the fact that they do have a good offensive line. And Pacheco is a good running back. I think he's definitely a better back in tandem with someone. You almost want him paired in more with a back with some speed and quickness, who you can run some stuff to the outside with, maybe run some quick runs with. Because Pacheco's at his best when he can just kind of be the bull in the china shop and just kind of run for 4 or 5, 6 hard yards, punching in around the goal line if he needs to. He's not, his vision's not the greatest. He doesn't have the most elusiveness, but he does have the ability, he is a strong player. He is just going to, get those tough yards sometimes. I think if they're targeting someone, it's going to be a back who can make like an immediate impact with maybe like some outside zone type running plays or something like that they really don't have a back that's experienced enough to do right now.
Interesting. You mentioned Breshard Smith, and I was a fan of his in college. I almost kind of see him as being like the Jared McKinnon of this offense. Do you see that being a thing?
Maybe eventually. They're going to have to trust him a little bit more. Jerick McKinnon was awesome on third down, but he proved he could pass block on third down.
Okay.
That's something Smith is going to have to work on a little bit. It's something he struggled with a bit in camp. But that's how like the big Jerick McKinnon fantasy season you have, that all starts out by kind of being the guy that ends up back there on the third down situation to begin with, is, having the trust that, you're not just going to be the route runner. Sometimes you got to stand and take in a block. And I know people paying attention to fantasy don't care about that, but Jared McKinnon was an excellent blocking running back. Mahomes had the full trust in him. If they blitzed, he was going to pick the guy up. So that'll be I do think there's a future where Breshard Smith does have a big season as a Chief. So, maybe about a year down the line, I think he's going to be a guy to look at. I just don't think it's going to be right now for him.
Yeah. I've said it on a lot of these you can't pass block. It's gonna be a problem for rookies to stay on the field for sure, especially when you got somebody like Mahomes you're trying to block for. That you get him hurt, and that could be happy people. All right, so I like to finish up with the same question for everybody. And is there somebody in camp, somebody you've seen, heard about in camp that's a little flying under the radar? More of the casual people outside of Kansas City don't really know about that us fantasy managers maybe need to keep in our back pocket just in case.
I'd say Noah Gray,
Okay.
backup tight end. Well, really, he's our backup tight end here in KC. I think on a lot of teams, he'd probably be good enough to play the majority of
Mm-hmm.
tight end one snaps. He just doesn't get a lot of that recognition because obviously he's playing behind Kelce. But there are games, this year he's gone out and scored 2 touchdowns some weeks, like against the Carolina Panthers last season, a game the Chiefs expected to win. They didn't get real funky with the playbook. I think Kelce played, like 40, like about less than half of the offensive snaps last season. And he went out and probably had like 6 or 7 catches and 2 touchdowns. But Gray's a guy the Chiefs like. It's not just that, they're going to use the backup tight end. They don't need to. They have enough guys to where they don't want to. Noah Gray's a good football player. He makes good plays when he does catch the ball. He's got reliable hands, and they do draw some plays up for him in the red zone. Sometimes he'll come in and be the Chiefs' short yardage, like QB sneak guy, because Mahomes doesn't do that. So
Mm-hmm.
I would keep an eye on him through, the course of the season. I think he almost compares kind of closely to like a Tucker Kraft kind of guy. I know a lot of Packers fans, there's been a lot of hype around him, but they play a pretty similar style of football. I don't think he's as explosive as Kraft is, but when it comes to like, terms of reliability and being there, I think that he is going to be a guy this season that gets a lot more snaps. And the Chiefs also re-signed him, for a decent little extension to keep him in town a little bit longer. So they like the guy, and I think they'll go to him when they are resting Kelce.
Yeah, and then if the worst happens and Kelce misses some games, then you've got a good guy. I've been stashing Gray on my dynasty bench for a couple of seasons now, just thinking like any day now Kelce's gonna retire, but it just never happens. So not that I wanted to go away, but my dynasty team is ready when he does. So, all right, Caleb, I want to thank you for coming on. This was great. I learned a lot. Hope everybody listening did as well. Before we close out, though, I'll give you a chance to say where people can find you and what you've got going on this season.
Yes, sir. You can find me on X at CJ Scoobs. I do mostly film analysis, film review, game review for Arrowhead Pride. We'll have the AP Film Room going back again here pretty soon on YouTube once the season gets rolling. And then I usually write, I write a few articles a week over Arrowhead Pride. So check those out. I like to give a lot of information away in those for, just some good analysis. But thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, and if you're still hanging around, please hit that subscribe button, that like button. Leave those comments. We'd love to hear from you. And jump on over to fantasysixpack.net, become an all-access member. You get the award-winning rankings, the draft cheat sheet, the player projections during the season, DFS and betting advice as well. Use promo code F6PPods to save 15%. It's there at the bottom of the screen. It'll be in the show description if you're listening. And hit the playlist to check out the rest of these team previews. And that's it for me. See you next time.